Peace, everybody. Welcome back to Mikey Eyes TV, aka Beyond the VHS. We're going to be talking to B-Girl Annabel from Seattle, Washington. She's been a B-Girl since the late 90s. She has at least 23, 24 years of experience into breaking culture. And we're going to talk about her journey with hip hop, and her perspective is going to be interesting because I haven't really spoken to too many people from Seattle, but definitely this is going to be one for the record books. So let's see if I can get her on right now. Thank you for everybody watching. So, and there we go. Let's try to see if we can do this again. Okay.
So, yes, we made it happen. Love it. Can you hear me?
Let me see.
You need me to say something so you can hear? I know, now you froze. Okay, let's see. Hey, everyone. About to go live with Mikey.
Hey.
Okay.
There it
Yay,
is.
we made it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, so can you introduce yourself and let everybody know who you are so that the people that are watching can have a understanding about you?
Sure. My name's Annabel Quintero. Wow. Now a mom of two, a author of Step Step Jump, and that's about transforming trauma to triumph from the 46th floor. It's about my experience in New York, and also starting out in Seattle. Seattle Beat Girl from the 1990s, and started learning how to dance, well, at home.
Oh, really?
Because my mom was always playing rumba, mambo, salsa, merengue. So I'm, as they call, Latina, but really I'm multiracial, detribalized
Okay.
indigenous woman. And my parents are from Ecuador. They're from South America.
Oh,
And
nice.
yeah, and so I have like African, indigenous, and European roots. And I've had the
Oh,
privilege, yeah, to be able to enjoy all the art forms and the music. So,
mm-hmm.
yes, hip hop has been near and dear to me, and such a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you. So you've been involved with hip hop for at least like 25 years?
I know, yeah.
At least 25, huh?
Yeah, I think I first started dancing. Um, I remember, so my teacher was Fever One from DVS,
Oh, okay.
and so the deal was I was going to teach him how to salsa, and he was going to teach me how to break. But just ended up he ended up just teaching me how to break.
Oh,
And
do you remember what year that was?
yeah, yeah, that was I want to say 96.
96.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dang, that was a good year. 96 was a good year.
Yep. Yep. I was a junior in college, and man, we there was always a session at Jefferson Community in Beacon Hill.
I heard
And
about that. Is that what Master Monkey also used to practice?
yeah, yeah. And actually before it was Massive Monkey, there was Boss Crew.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and in fact, I remember the first time I was like doing the six step, learning how to do six step, and Jeromsky was one of Fever's students as well.
Yeah,
So,
I remember that. He was super young.
oh yeah, yeah, an amazing soccer player, and
Oh,
then just
really?
oh yeah, he was amazing, amazing athlete, and then he just took that, and wow, I mean, to see where he is now today, it's like so amazing.
So, so what really attracted you to get involved with like hip hop besides having somebody teach you? Like, what was it that grabbed you?
Really, as a little as growing up in the 80s, I mean,
Yeah.
I was the youngest. My sister, we all danced, but my sister was like 6 years older than me, so she got to go out, she got to go to the parties, and I always felt like, oh, I'm missing out, so I was always waiting for that moment till I could be old enough to like get down and dance. And yeah, she'd go to all the clubs in Seattle because they had more clubs for youth at the time.
Right.
And at that time, you know, it was the first time we saw New York City Breakers, Little Let, Flip Rock on the stage performing for President Ronald Reagan, because I don't know, I'm dating myself, but he had them perform twice for the inaugural ball. And
Yeah.
so here we are, like, seeing Latinos getting down and, on TV and then traveling the world. It just completely was like, oh my goodness. Because especially being in the Northwest, there's not a big Latino community out here. I mean, now there's more,
Oh,
but
okay.
growing up, no, not much
Yeah.
at all. So we kind of felt like the only Mohicans out here. So it was just amazing to see that. Yeah.
So you
So
got a
ever
chance to
since,
watch that live when it
yeah.
came on TV?
Oh, yeah.
So that had to be around 83, 84.
Yeah.
So that's
Absolutely.
30 years ago.
Yeah. Saludos. Oh, from Argentina. Gracias por estar aquí esta noche con nosotros. um,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah. It just changed. It was the first time to see the possibility of, wow, you know, Black and brown kids were able to take their creative art form and then travel the world and share it with everyone. And everyone was amazed, right? They were on talk shows, and it was just,
Yeah.
it transformed
I'm actually
us.
friend I'm actually friends with everybody in New York City Breakers though. Actually one of the guys he just called me today, so I have a relationship with the New York City Breakers.
Oh my goodness. Oh.
Yeah. For me, because for me, they were like my Avengers too. They were my superheroes though too, because they had the spandex suits. They was all in unity. Everybody just like I like the Flip Rock though too, probably because he was a melanin brother. You know, he was melanated, and I appreciate that because that's what that I seen, and he was explosive though when he did the front gainer, and then he did the back flip, the forward flip, and Bobby Potts, that's his name, Bobby Potts, aka Flip Rock. So that was my inspiration when I was in when I first came breaking was Flip Rock from New York City Breakers.
And he's tall. I mean, that brother is
Yeah,
tall and big. So for him to be flipping like that, making it look like so easy. And so years later, then, so that was 96 when I started dancing, performed with
okay.
DVS. Conception Records came out. So we were performing with them with DJ Supreme LaRock. And then I had moved to New York in 99. And
Oh, you
I
did?
moved to
Okay.
Kingsbridge, to the Bronx.
Oh,
Yeah, and I was in the same, basically couple blocks away from Little Lep. So Little Lep,
oh, okay.
yeah, so we'd hang out. Oh my goodness. And he was just like, took me in, and I just couldn't believe, like, oh my goodness, he's the little leprechaun in Run DMC video. And now he's like my friend, and we're hanging out. And I mean, I don't think a lot of people know that. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
So what was New York like for you in the 90s? Because I know like it was making a resurgence, and I noticed the New York City Breakers, Rock Steady Crew, Zulu Nation, those three crews like they started making a massive comeback. So you being in the Bronx, like what was that like?
oh my goodness. I mean, even when I had moved to the Bronx, if you go up a little bit, there's Lehman College. And I remember seeing Celia Cruz perform for free
Oh.
for the community, because that's how much she loved, everyone
Mhm.
loved the Bronx and everything. So it was I couldn't believe it was so alive. Like, it was so many artists. It was it just was like, it just felt like I had always imagined it, right? Like, full of
Mm.
life, energy, a city that doesn't sleep. I came in the summertime, it was super hot.
Oh yeah.
Like that song New York is Red Hot. Oh my goodness, that
Yeah.
it was blazing hot. And it was just exciting, especially because I came in 99 and there was so much hoopla about the 2000s, right? Like Y2K. And
Yeah.
so it was just a great time to be there. And I struggled a lot I had always wanted to move there because my brother and sister were born in Brooklyn, and I was the only one born in Seattle. And so it was always exciting. And I remember going to my brother's 30th birthday, and that was when and it was like a hot summer. So it was still, September's in New York City, right? It's still warm. And I remember being there, and I was like, okay, I got to move here. So I had,
Oh really? Okay.
yeah, because I was still in Seattle, and I was like a board member. I was a mentor. I had my own job. I was about to buy a house, and I was like, this can't be it. I was like, this can't, when you do everything, I graduated in 4 years with my bachelor's. I did the whole cookie cutter thing. And I was like, this is it. This is life. I had my own office. I was like,
Man.
so I was like, nope. And I remember, and I wrote about it in my book. I remember, like,
Oh, do you have that book? Could you show
yeah,
that?
yeah, of course. I gotta
Yeah.
get it now.
Okay, I'll wait for you. So everybody check this out. This big girl Annabelle from Seattle, Washington. She actually wrote a book about, I think it's about hip hop though, right?
Yeah, it starts. So it's Step Step Jump. It starts in Seattle in the
Oh.
hip hop scene. I talk about the Art Bar, which was a huge mecca of just artists and MCs and graph writers and producers, um, B-boys, B-girls, I mean, breakers. It was just the Art Bar. It was just the nexus of where everything was happening for so many years. And so
Hmm.
I start the book out, Steps to Jump. I start the book out there. And then how I really just finally was tired of having my dreams on the back burner. I was like, nope, I'm going to move to New York. And I did. And then
How long did you live there for?
10 years.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you lived there from to about to what, 2010?
Yeah.
2009?
2008, 2009. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Hey, did you ever go to the Rocksteady and Zulu anniversaries?
yes. Absolutely.
Oh, really?
It was so hot. Yes. Yeah. They were, I mean, at that time, the Rocksteady anniversary, they weren't doing it uptown anymore. It was mostly on the water at that
Oh,
time. And then,
okay.
but the Zulu anniversary, that was still in the Bronx. Yeah.
Mm.
So, yeah, just meeting so many people, and like being in Seattle, and then you go to New York and there's like that many more people that you're meeting. But it was like living in two worlds, because I lived in the Bronx. I worked downtown in Wall Street, because and then I would come back home, take off my suit, and then go practice.
Yeah,
And at the
yeah.
time, Bieber was there, Alien Ness was there, Renegade,
Mm-hmm.
He-Girl Renegade,
Yeah, I
um,
remember that. She had moved from Paris.
and oh, what's his name? Nemesis.
Yeah.
Nemesis was also there, and I remember we all celebrated the 2000s. That New Year's Eve, we were all at my apartment.
Oh, really?
We danced all night. We were breaking all night in my apartment in the Bronx.
I
It was
think
such a
more. I
fun
think more.
time.
I think Mauricio was living there. Mauricio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was living in the Bronx though too around that time because he was staying with a dude named Speedy from New York City Breakers. So
Oh
they had an
yeah.
apartment. So it was
Speed.
Zulu Gremlin, Mauricio, and I don't. I think Fever might have stayed with them at the time. I'm
Yeah,
not
Fever
sure.
was living with them too for a while. Yeah.
Yeah,
He
I would
was
see these videos and pictures. I was getting information because this is right before the internet started getting popular because the internet they really started getting like attention to like 99, 2000s when I got my first computer.
yeah. I remember I didn't have a cell phone. I remember like, yeah, I think I finally got it like a year before I had moved to New York, but yeah. And then I changed my number, so I had a 917 number. But yeah, I remember Speedy in London,
Yeah, those
perform,
are all my friends.
yeah, performing with them, performing with Hierophysics, which was like a mix. It was with Popmaster Fable, Jazzy Jeff, Sweepy, Alien Ness, and
Mm.
Fever. And that was my first performance was at the CBGB Gallery.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was like, I couldn't believe I was on that stage. I mean, I know it wasn't like the venue of CBGB's, it was the gallery part, but I didn't care. It was like, what? I'm like dancing with the cultural architects, and
Hmm.
dancing for me was always a cultural expression and also a therapeutic. I mean, it really allowed me to express that aggression that when you got that fire inside of you and you got to let it out, and it allowed me it gave me that creative outlet to do that.
Right.
And something
I,
about,
I,
yeah.
yes, I want to ask you, like, just to switch the question real quick. When you was in Seattle or New York, when you would hear about the West Coast, like, was there any crews or any individual breakers that you would hear, like from Cali, that you'd be like, dang, like, because when I would think of Seattle, living in California, like the two people or the three people that I was hearing the most was Twix and Juice and Fever. Those are the main three that I was hearing. So I was asking you the same question on the West Coast. Did you start hearing about our scene though, like when you were in Seattle or in New York?
When I was in Seattle, I remember went down to LA a few times. Asia One definitely was
Hmm.
huge. She had that one event. How
The
can I
B-Boy
forget it?
Summit.
Yeah, B Boy Summit. Oh my goodness, that was so much fun.
Yeah.
And there were so many names. I think it's been so long that I can't remember, but I know that I remember there was this one crew and they would go to New York as well, because then when I would go to New York, they would be there too. So it was such a community. And I love that about it. Like,
Yeah.
especially even
You don't
Vancouver.
you don't remember the name of that crew that was from California that
Uh,
was it Style Element?
style it was Yeah, Style Elements. Definitely, yeah. It's hard for me to remember.
It was I think it was Style Elements because even when they shot the Freshest Kids, that was the first time that they went out to New York.
Yeah, Style Elements definitely. I think Seattle, Circle of Fire. Um,
Yes.
and there was one crew out in Vancouver, BC, a writer called Dedos, and there were other b-boys, but I forget their crew's name. I wish I would have written it down more, but yeah, it was
Hmm.
just the fact that we could do the events and really come together and just go off and have music. I mean, that was amazing. Seeing Ken Swift and everyone really like seeing the people you had seen in the 80s and now being in the
Right.
90s, and it was up close and personal, right? Like
Oh,
that
I know.
that was
When I
amazing.
first seen the Rocksteady crew at the B-Boy Summit 3, I couldn't even believe it. I knew who Flowmaster was. So Flowmaster had introduced me to Mr. Wiggles, and then I seen Ken Swift, and then I seen Crazy Legs, and then I seen Easy Rock, and then I couldn't even believe it, but I was Zulu. So it was like everything was like I've never seen Rocksteady Crew in person before until I went to San Diego to the B-Boy Summit, and I was astounded because I was like they're face to face.
I remember being so close and dancing like only a couple feet away from Skeeter Rabbit.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, and the Boogaloos. I mean, because and everyone, they were playing a beat and everyone was just doing a certain move together, so everyone was all dancing right there, and it was just wow. I mean, just to be
hmm
around, yeah, meeting Wiggles and seeing them. Oh, it was just
yeah,
it was, and I think that's why I always, those are like one of the best memories, right? Like when you think about like your happiest moments in life. You're younger,
yes,
you're just creating, you're discovering this whole other community. And for me, I'm really close to my family, and it was the first time I had felt that way, and, and had it be a different community. Like the hip
hmm
hop community really felt like that. Like we could travel anywhere and people will put you up, they open up their house to you.
Oh
And I
man,
just loved that. It was like, wow. Like you didn't
I
have to.
remember many nights you had to sleeping on the floor, being in another city, and just waking up, and they're just like, you know what I'm saying? The whole house was just people from different parts of the world, Canada, New York, Miami, like Japan, and we're just all sleeping on the floor.
That's how we did. That's how we made it all work. It was about us being together and sharing moves and talking about what was happening and creating. Um,
hmm
and I think like that's something that I really hope the current generation continues doing is, no matter what's happening, to keep the connection and to have your creative force be bigger than COVID, than any challenge you have in life. Because, so, the cultural architects did it when the Bronx was burning, and then we did it in the 90s. It was hard for us to travel, but we still did it anyways. And so
Yeah.
I hope that, the generation now, that they continue to do that, because that's all we have is the moment.
What's up, Marcos? Yeah, so I think in our conversation you wanted to talk about some other things too as well. So yeah, whatever you wanted to share, you can share it right now. Is there a specific topic that you wanted to share though too?
Yeah, I mean, I think just in general, like, um, being older, right? Being 47, and having my injuries, having family, having all these other things that kind of are a priority over that creative dance, right? And I just mentioned it earlier that there was a time when I was, studying for my master's, and we want to build our careers and stuff, and sometimes I'd have to always like hide that part of myself.
Oh,
uh
really?
yeah, because people look at urban culture, they look down on it, right? It's like it's and you want to build your career, and I have always looked younger than what I am, so I've always wanted to be taken more serious. And
hmm
it's harder for a woman of color to like build herself up and then keep her culture as well. I mean, I always had my Latino culture, but I think after so many years now, just coming back to make joy my priority, right? And how hip hop is just so much fun for me. Like dancing is just fun.
Oh,
So I want to do it not like because I just enjoy it. And so I definitely wanted to share that with everyone, because it doesn't matter how old you are, but to do the things that bring you joy. Because now I finally feel like I have complete, like the full 360. I can be my authentic self. um, I can, I'm doing this lecture called Mambo to Hip Hop, where I love history. So I get to share like the history of the Caribbean in the 1930s and then all the way to 1970s and what was happening um, politically and what made
Mm-hmm.
certain artists come up to the States. And then how was Latin jazz created and how did salsa come to
Right.
be? I mean, all of that. I love that. I get to do that in this lecture series and then actually dance. I get to show them a salsa move. And then I'm like, okay, this is now the Bronx step. And they can see it,
Okay.
it's like they can see the side step, the Bronx step, and it's just been an amazing time for me
Right.
to, like I said,
Right.
have a holistic approach to hip hop now.
You,
Yeah.
you know what I really wanted to share? Everybody's watching though too, like my friends. I have them on here now. The most beautiful thing that I loved about hip hop is that blacks and Latinos were like
Yes.
this.
Yep.
I mean, all my friends, when I first got into breaking, majority was Latinos. You know, I used to live in a little town called Madera, and Madera is a predominantly Mexican town, you know. But that being said, me being who I am, I got fully accepted. So I was in people's houses eating tortillas, eating stopes, abondigas, you know what I'm saying? Like going to quinceañeras. Like I was there at the quinceañeras. And they would look at the list and they would look at me and I'll be like, yeah, bro, I'm on the list. I'm on the list, you know. And I would go to car shows, and for me, that was a beautiful experience. Is that I was able to cross cultural boundaries that I know that would probably be limited if there wasn't hip hop, but hip hop was that bridge that got for me to be accepted in the Latino community, like 100%. Not only like it was like I was totally in, and I lived my whole life like that. So for me, that's why I admire hip hop so much, though, because it broke down so many stereotypes, and it allowed me to cross over to a community that otherwise would have been kind of like, I don't know, like
Yep.
if we have anything in common, but it's like we have everything in common because first of all, we're human.
Yeah, exactly. Soul to soul gets to meet. And like that same thing. I mean, I talk about the Bronx burning in the 1970s and how landowners, there was a cultural shift happening and they were literally burning their buildings for an insurance check. And it was a huge white flight out of the Bronx. And it was
Mm,
what, 90 something, 91% Black and Latino. And these were the forgotten children that the cities, the state, the government didn't do anything, and they grew up in the rubble and they still created, they still had their
hmm.
culture and that infusion, right? Like I'll talk about the African experience in terms of Latino, growing up, Latino, a lot of Latino music, it's African. And then me growing
Let's
up in North
talk
America,
about that.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
in North America, then with the hip hop experience, well, that's an African experience as well, right? So just really talking about that bicultural and how the African drum just did so much. It was
Oh yeah,
it
that's the
was
first drum.
oh yeah, it wasn't allowed, right? Like the African
Hmm.
drum was outlawed in North America. It was only played in certain days in New Orleans, but it wasn't until a lot of like Puerto Ricans and Cubans came in the 1930s, and then they brought the African drum to American
Mm.
jazz. Because if you listen to American jazz, it didn't have las congas y todo eso. That was later, and just to see that mix of us kind of coming back to ourselves, right? Um,
Hmm.
and that's what I love about the cipher. And people are like, "What's a cipher?" I'm like, "It's a circle. We've always danced in circles. Our ancestors always danced in a circle. We always
I
danced
know.
for ceremony, when someone passed away, when someone was born. when someone is sick,
Mhm.
there's like the somatic healing and the spiritual experience when you take up time and space. And hip hop allowed us to literally let our ancestors live through us. And
Mm.
so, yeah, it's just a beautiful, I just feel so honored that I was able to like connect with the right people and yeah, like a powwow. Yep. Cypher is like a musical powwow. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
I love that. And the Black
And
Indigenous, yeah, experiences.
yeah, and you know what, Anna, like I want to share from the time that I started breaking when I was like 12 years old, you know. And from the time I was 12 years old to like where I'm at today, there's never really been a time in my life that I felt like depressed or sad because hip hop is just pure energy like I've never experienced in my life. I can be feeling sad right now and get off the phone with you, and then I can put on Run DMC, you know, Tougher and Leather, and I can hear my Adidas. And like my whole body would just start getting goosebumps. So, you know, and for me, I think that's why I've always loved hip hop because it was my playground. You know what I'm saying? It was my personal playground. There's no internet, there's no social media, but what I had was me and my imagination and the dance floor.
Yep. I love that. It's true. There's so many songs that gave me strength when I
Mhm.
was going through so many challenges. I mean, that's one thing that my book does talk about is me working on Wall Street, opening up the office, and then something hitting my building. And I'm like, I don't even know what that is. And then I'm feeling this earthquake. And I'm like, what? And I am like, ay Dios mío, ¿qué hago? Like, dear God, what do I do? And like the whole office turns gray. And I realize in that point, in that moment, I got to leave. And man, Mikey, it was crazy how the building was tossing me around. And I
You
finally
know,
get to the stairwell and then
you,
I'm choking. I can't even breathe.
you know what's
And,
crazy though about that, Annabelle? My birthday is September 11th.
I, I can't believe that.
My birthday is 9/11.
Well, that's my rebirth. And
Yeah.
that's, I felt like me, you know, a lot of people, they're like, Annabelle, that's your other birthday, is September 11th. Yeah. But, you know, I share that because afterwards, you know, the PTSD and the trauma, and I remember
Mhm.
this song, um, it, you know, bad language like always, but it was like we gonna make it, and I like I
We
would play.
gon' make it. We gon' make it. We gon' make it. We gon' I
And then
think
it
it was
had
by Jada Kiss.
Jada Kiss, yes, and it
Yeah.
had like the horns and or
Oh,
the
I love
strings,
that song.
yeah, and I would play that over, like it was a loop, it was on rotation because it just helped me get through that time. And also with being sad and being depressed and being angry, I could just like get down on the dance floor and let it all out, right? Because
Hmm.
I was so angry at that time too. So it allowed me to get all my anger out. It was just,
Right.
I mean, hip hop
You,
music, it's always been this relief. So it has been really therapeutic. And
right.
then with dancing, there you go. You get to transmute transmute that trauma, transmute the hurt, and alchemize it into something else.
I think that's important though because I think one thing that we haven't really talked about in our community is mental health and trauma because even the kids from the 70s and the 80s, like that whole experience was from trauma. Everybody, I remember all the best dancers in my school came from trauma. Like nobody had it together, to be honest with you. Everybody came from a dysfunctional family, but they were amazing dancers,
Yeah.
you know? And I think today, I think as a community, I think it's finally time to start addressing that because there's a lot of people I know right now that's going through having they're going through mental they're going through a crisis though, but they have nobody to talk to, so they keep it to themselves and they end up committing suicide.
Oh my goodness, it's so devastating. And that's why everyone knowing our history is important. Like when I talk about
Mhm.
the Bronx burning and the fact that there was no funding, the fact that we were economically isolated, the fact that a redlining segregated us, right? You couldn't
Mhm.
and the buildings that would accept Section A, right? And all of that, the racism,
I
the
know.
I mean, even at that time, women didn't even have the ability to have a credit card until like, I don't know, 1970 or something. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? So it's all these different pieces, let alone the whole drug epidemic, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it's been one devastation after the other. And so one of the things too, it's like we need to do what we can to heal ourselves, but we also need to know our history, because I don't necessarily know that individuals can fix something that systemically brought upon us. And that's something that why our history, our political history, why our financial history, even our
Mhm.
religious history, like when I do certain workshops on Latino identity and culture, I talk about what the Roman Catholic Church did, because a Latino, what is that? Like a person who was created through colonization. I mean, that's what our ethnic group was. So you can't know Latino culture and identity without studying colonization, because
Mhm.
the that was a political, financial, spiritual strategy to dominate, and then it ended up creating Latinos, right? So when
Mm.
we want to decolonize our minds, we got to go there. We got to know all of that,
I
and
know.
then you realize, oh, there's all these laws that were passed, doctrine of discovery, and all these other things that basically dispossessed us from our land and extracted our wealth from our labor, commodified, like made our lives a commodity. And that's that's why it's so important that we know our history, so that we can identify now when we see certain laws pass or certain people get funded and other people's don't. Be like, you got to speak up. You got to say, hey,
Yeah.
systemically, this is not supporting us. This is not equitable. But if you
Right.
don't even know your history, you can't call it out.
Right. And one of my friends right now, he just said we got to explain to the kids why the way that the world is, and I think that's important because kids are getting raised by their phones, not really by their parents. They're getting taught through the internet what life is, though, So I think it's important to pull them to the side and to educate them on like who they really are, like where they really come from, and just to let them know like racism would never be okay. The N word
Yeah.
would never be okay. The N word would never be okay. I don't care how many rappers say it. It's done more damage than it's done good.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And the price, that's the thing that I feel with COVID, now that everyone has had a collective traumatic event, I think now society can understand. Now, your kids who may be middle class or well off, if they're having mental wellness, you know, um, complications or challenges, imagine the kids that had far less, that
Oh,
were
I
in a
know.
neighborhood that is literally a war zone. It may not be called that, throughout the decades, those were war zones. It may not be declared a war, but literally with so many people with having guns and,
I grew
it's,
up in South Central.
oh
I
man.
know exactly what it was like in the 80s growing up in South Central, and it was a concrete Vietnam. Literally, you didn't know, like, if you walked outside, And if you went like 2 or 3 blocks down the street to 7-Eleven, if you was gonna make it back home, because there was a gang on every corner.
You
There was
see?
Florencia, there was Insane, there was Rolling Twenties, there was there was Carver Park Crips, there was East Coast Crips, there was a Crip gang on every corner.
Oh my goodness.
And but the thing about that, if you was a b-boy during that time in the '80s and your name was strong, you can bypass all that because I did. I
Well,
bypassed all the gangs would be standing in front of the corner, and I would walk up to the store, and it would look, and it'd be like, oh, that's the one dude that be popping and breaking. It'd be like, don't even trip, I said, don't even trip, I said, he's cool. So I was able to bypass like all that.
yeah, I mean, I
Mhm.
mean that's the thing is that being a b-boy, b-girl, being a dancer, right? That always was the neutral because, and then of course you'd have people that would want you to win, right? That
Yeah.
would want you to win the battle or this and that. But that was definitely a lot of people saving grace, people being graffiti artists and like creating art and like being all the different ways
Breaking
that,
saved me though, Annabelle, to be honest with you. Breaking saved me. Um, I want to share the story though, like when I got my friends from Madeira on here though one time. There was a situation where I was hanging out at there was this parking lot, and in this parking lot there was a Burger King, and we was all hanging out there, and a group of high school kids, like they were just passing through, like just roaming through town, like looking to see, what was going on. And I was just kind of standing by myself, and they all got out the car, and somebody looked at me and they said, "What you looking at?" And I turned my head and I seen 2 carloads of people get out the car, right? And I started walking away, and they circled me. They had me in a circle, and they had hoods on their head. And somebody said, "What's your name?" I said, "Mikey Ice." And and the dude said, he's other the dude that be at the community center, that be popping and breaking. I said, "Yeah." He said, "Yo," he's like, "Everybody's like, put your shit down." He's like, "This homeboy's cool." And everybody put down like the sticks and everything, literally just because of basically my name and my reputation.
oh,
And they had me clean. There was maybe at least like 12 kids
oh,
though. I say kids
Benito.
because they were in high school, but they had weapons on them.
I mean,
But
and that's, and see, and that, thank God, I'm so happy you made it. I
hmm
mean, that is just, I love that story, right? But
yeah, they
that
had me
mercy,
though too, and I was just like, this is gonna be it.
but see, and like your story and that lived experience, most people are not, don't know someone who's lived that life. They don't realize
No.
how you can't, because some people are like, well, just move. If like, and I'm like, people can't just move. They it's like, and so, and and that's the thing too, that I think urban culture gets, mis, you know, almost criminalized, but
hmm
people don't realize like, well, you have to survive and there's all these circumstances, but that was systemically created. If you learn about redlining, if you learn about economic isolation, if you learn
mm
about, right, all of our history, like that is the residue of all of the decisions that this country has made. Those are our, that is our collective experience because of our collective choices. And
hmm
that's why it's so important. That's why I love history, because if we want to have a new possibility, we have to expand our consciousness, but we have to understand the system that we're living in now and all the ways it was created, and so that we can do something else. I mean, that's what I
hmm
love now, that I see all these dancers and they're younger, and there's all these newer dance forms that are taking a part of breakdancing and they're like niching it down and they're just going off on it. And I love it because it's like any way that you can just create and raise your consciousness and your energy to go above whatever circumstance you have, that is what hip hop is about. That's always been
Right.
hip hop. Everyone created a movement to escape the reality, right? The things that you couldn't get away from, and it just,
Poverty.
so we're 50 years now
Poverty.
celebrating 50
Yes,
years.
50 years of hip hop though. I was gonna ask you, who do you like today as far as like when it comes to representation of B-girlism?
Oh, so
I know who I like
many.
today.
I mean, Rockefeller, she's my ride and die. Like,
Okay,
yeah, B girl Mel. Um,
okay.
love seeing her. Love that, she's representing for, Asian Pacific Islanders, like West Coast.
Hmm.
And also being up there in age, right? And I've been following more. It's been interesting how the scene has really allowed there to be like more styles of dancing, and I love that
Mm,
because for me, I think, I mean, I love the 70s, so I love the salsa, the hustle. People were breaking and popping and locking. They were doing all of that in the 70s, right? And so to see it now, like the the hustle scene out here in the Northwest, and then seeing the breaking and seeing people voguing and crump and doing animation. I mean, just all these things. It's like, yeah, I love that that is coming. Um, it's just, so I've been looking at other dancers like Danielle Polanco. I don't know if you,
okay,
yeah, she's an amazing choreographer, but just her style and the way that um, she's not a, she's not a B girl, but she's an amazing dancer. And I just love the infusion of different forms with, with it.
right.
Um, but yeah,
I
but
don't,
B girl Mel is definitely like, I'm like girl
okay.
banging on her.
I wanted to ask you, so you were born in Seattle?
Yeah.
Okay. I remember when I was in high school, and I remember my friends like, we're gonna go cruising though, right? So my friend he had the mini truck with the 20-inch speakers in the back though, right? And everybody has their sound system on. So my boy said he gets the cassette tape. He's all, put this on, and I put it on, and I heard a Godzilla like voice, and I heard, my posse's on Broadway, posse up, mm, mm, my posse's on Broadway. Me and Kiss Sensation, oh my God. That's when I first heard about the Seattle scene, is when I heard Sir Mix-a-Lot, my posse's on Broadway.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, he put us on the
What was that
map.
like? What was that like when Sir Mix-a-Lot came out, being in Seattle though? What was that like?
Oh,
Because for us on the West Coast, we loved that was our anthem because it had the most bass. You can hear the bass. I used to be able to hear my friend coming down the street, and I couldn't even see his car, but I can hear the mm, mm, mm.
well,
So what
I
was that like,
remember
Sir
it was
Mix-a-Lot?
amazing because Nasty Ness,
Okay.
and I believe the DJ, he produced it, and like with him, and he would do parties and jams at community centers.
Oh,
So one time I remember it was like one of the few parties, because I was young. I was like in elementary school, and my sister was older, right? And he
hmm,
came, and everyone was at the community center, and we were just dancing and dancing, and it was just wow. I mean, just to be there, it was everything.
Sir
And
Mix-a-Lot killed it for us though, and then he came out with beepers. No, beepers. I remember when he played that song, beepers. Beepers was the introduction to pagers.
yeah,
Once he came out with beepers, everybody started buying pagers.
yeah, that was the thing.
That was the thing, though. So shouts out to Sir Mix-a-Lot. Like Sir Mix-a-Lot had a huge fan base on the West Coast, though. We was playing my posse on Broadway day and night. I
Wow.
loved it. I still love it to this day. I wish that they would play hip hop like that today, like when I go to jams, but I just think everybody's just stuck on break beats and discovering new break beats. But it's like for me, like hip hop was always gonna be number one. I don't care what new break beat they make. I don't care whatever new genre of music that they come out. You cannot take away the
Oh,
original sauce.
but you know, the other problem with that is that when you record an event with that music, you can't you can't have it on because it's the record
Yeah,
label's music. So I see why all the jams are doing like
yeah,
break beats and keeping it like that, because then they can actually control the content and do something with it versus Facebook or some social media platform shutting you down just because you don't have the rights to the song. But
yeah.
I
That's the
agree with
reason
you.
why.
I mean, even when I go to practice sessions, sometimes I'm like, okay, I want to hear a song. Like I want,
I know.
yeah, yeah. But it's just a blessing that, you know, being older and being able to still get down. You know, I've had my injuries, but you know, that's why I just taking care of your body. It is your temple, and so
Did you
definitely
ever quit? Did you ever quit breaking from 96 to where you're at right now? Did you ever take like a pause and say, you know what, I'm not gonna break, for 4 years, or I'm just gonna focus on school, or I'm gonna focus on my family? Have you always been breaking while doing other
no.
things in life?
Yeah, no. I started in 96 and then I moved to New York in 99 and then I was dancing into the 2000s. Yeah, I remember being on a 40 doo-wop and Frosty Freeze was still alive, and I remember hitting the floor and then he hit the floor and it was just like amazing. So just to be able to like do that. And then I think I think around 2000, I was in that book We Be Girls with
Oh, you were?
yeah. Hmm.
I'm in Karis one book, The Gospel of Hip Hop.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Wow.
I'm
So
in that book.
that was in like '05, and then I had like this health complication. So I
Oh,
wasn't
okay.
able to tour with the book as you know I had planned. But so '05 I took a break, and
Oh, you
then
did? Okay.
yeah, and then I became a mom in
Mm,
'07. So that time, like being a mom with two young kids, and then I had Sophia in '07, Celine in '09. So there, I took a little break, and then I started dancing again. But then I got into an accident in 2013. So
oh,
that I couldn't even salsa. I couldn't do anything. So that really, I never really knew how much I'd love to dance until it was taken away from me. And then I realized, man, it, you know, it was the hardest thing to live with, to not be able to use my body. So at that time I focused on school. I got my master's in education policy and organizational leadership. I did a lot of advocacy around equitable education, especially for children of color.
mm.
Yeah, I did the Mambo to Hip Hop, showed the documentary, and did like an after school program for kids. So really just got much more involved in education for my children. And then I danced I couldn't really dance. I mean, honestly, it's been now, I mean, 10 years. I mean, it's
Oh,
2023.
really?
Yeah. Because I injured myself again in 2019. And so, yeah, it's been 10 years that I have not been able to dance. But now I can
Oh,
salsa, now I can break, I can do, you know, footwork and my freezes and like top rocks. So I just feel so blessed that
do you dance by yourself or do you go to a community center?
both. I dance in my
Oh, you
living
do?
room, and then I also go, you know, practice at a community center, and then if I go out, then I'll dance there too. So, you know, birthday or what
Mm.
have you. Yeah. And then when I do the mambo to hip hop, lecture and workshop. I danced there, and that one's coming up June 11th. It's going to be with 206 Zulu is hosting it, and it's going to be at Washington Hall. And then I'm judging a battle at Folk Life Festival, which is in Seattle Center, Memorial, May 29th.
I want to ask you about that book. So how can somebody get a copy of that book? Because I'm an avid reader. I mean, I love to read. So how do you get a copy of your book?
Oh yeah, you can just go to my my account. You can go to stepstepjump.com. I have an audio book that I sell directly on my website, or you can visit me here at my account on Instagram, and right in the bio there's a link, and then you can go there and you can get the audio book or you can get the paper book. But yeah, it looks like this.
How much does it cost?
It's $15.
How many pages?
I think it's 212.
Okay.
Yeah, 212.
Oh, nice.
Area code in New York.
Okay.
It's been.
I know. No, I was gonna say. I know we talked about the time. I think we've been on at least an hour, right?
I know. I can't believe that. I was like.
See, that's what I was telling you. That's what I was telling you. Like we just really know. I mean, I can ask you another 4 or 5 more questions though, but I know that you got to get some rest. So my last question to you is like, what advice would you give to the young people today, being a big girl and being a mom that's been in the scene over 20 years old? Like, what advice would you share to them today? Because in today, I believe in today scene, like people still need role models though, and we being the people that's been involved with the scene, I know there is going to be some females that are going to look at this video and that might be younger, might even be teenagers. So what advice would you share to them that's just for them just getting involved with hip hop? Like, what would you have to say to them?
A couple things, like definitely seek out the original architects, like
Yes.
really follow them and get to know the history and read the books. But also, I think for me, when I was starting out, there was a lot of I had a lot of self-doubt. I held back because I was afraid of being judged for not doing something right or not hitting the beat right. And the comparisons is the death of all joy. So don't compare yourself to other folks. Like, love, use each other's energy as a creative force and do your thing, and know that if you're called to this, because you're either called, I think hip hop calls you. I don't think you can just like seek it out or anything. And just know that there's something yes, that's our current art form that allows us to take up time and space, but it's also an invitation for you to really look and connect with your ancestors. That is how we always danced. And it doesn't matter from what part of the world you're from, you at some point were indigenous and your people danced in a circle. And you may have forgotten that. Even Europeans may have forgotten, but, because it's so many more years than I'd say, Black and Latinos or indigenous and Africans, right? But we always danced. So not only...
My mother was a dancer. My mother was a dancer. My mother and father met at a high school dance.
Yeah.
So you would think that I was already destined to dance. I was already dancing before I touched earth. Because in the stomach, the babies are already having movement. It can understand rhythm. It can understand vibration and vibes and everything. So I was already doing my thing.
Yeah. And the other thing too is it's in your blood. Your ancestors, that lineage is in your blood. So your ancestors are alive because of you. So remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Remember you get an opportunity to have a relationship with them, whether, whether
Yeah.
transitioned or not, whether they're your parents or not, is what I meant.
Mm-hmm.
But do, and also I'd say dream impossibility. Like, who would have known that these forgotten children from the South Bronx, the Black and Latino kids, created hip hop, and now we're celebrating 50 years of it. But also do what you can to learn um, how you can also be abundant, not only with art, but how can make it a business, how you can live and have an abundant mindset. We don't need to only live in scarcity just because that's the systems that that made it a scarce environment for us, right? And we had to go beyond it, however way we chose. And so also learn it's your birthright to be abundant. I mean, and so
Mm-hmm.
how can you be creative, have it be something that can support your livelihood and also your spirit, because no matter what, everything comes from your energy. It comes from within. So also, if you're ever like have to perform, or you're ever like a little unsure of yourself, ground yourself, breathe, know that this is your moment. This is your time for your soul to express itself. You only have this moment. You're not promised tomorrow. And to really make the most. And like I always say, you got to step jump into your greatness. Step jump for your body. You got to step jump for love. And and you got to just keep doing that thing that makes you uncomfortable, but it evolves your art, and it evolves you as a beautiful human being that you are. So that's what I'd
Oh,
love to share with
amazing. Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you for sharing that, everybody, and thank everybody for watching. Um, this was a very this is a very good, informative conversation with you. To me, it's a conversation, and I appreciate it. And if you ever want to get back on, if you can, when we get off, and you think like, man, I could have talked about some other things, we can definitely do a part two. We can definitely do a part two
Okay,
because
I
there's,
would love
I didn't
that.
even, yeah, I didn't even really get. I wanted to talk more about Devious Crew. I wanted to talk about Boss. I wanted to talk about some other things, but we're already going on maybe like
I
an
know.
hour and something.
Tremendo. I know. So thank you all for being on with us. I loved
Yeah,
everything, Flippin' Paint and Gallegos and man, Caleb and Ilapino and OG Cookie. Yeah.
yeah.
So I really appreciate you all coming on and chiming into the conversation. And yeah, we'll have to do this again. I hope
All
you
right.
all have a beautiful start to May. It's Beltane Day. This is the day of a returning light, for those who are Celtic, and it's Belarus is what we would, before, when the Europeans had their own spirituality, they would honor her today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, before we get off, Marcos, I just want to say something to a friend named Marcos. Marcos, I'm gonna do one with Boy. I don't know, bro, if you should go to sleep because we're gonna talk about Madeira history because this is um this is like the beginning of me when I left Long Beach, I moved to a town called Madeira, and then there was a gentleman on here, and he was already like involved with hip hop, when I got there. So I'm gonna do an interview with him too as
Oh my
well.
goodness, that's gonna be amazing. All right,
Yeah.
well, I hope you guys catch it, and thanks so much for having me, Mikey, and we'll talk
Okay.
soon.
All right. Thank you.
Peace and blessings. Bye.
You too. Peace.